Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take a whole lot of information and boil it down into something clear, something useful just for you.
Exactly. You're looking to grasp things quickly, right?
Yeah.
But properly without getting lost in all the jargon or, endless reading.
Yeah, absolutely. So for this deep dive, we're zeroing in on families, specifically how social learning and some wider social theories give us lenses to understand family dynamics.
Right. Our goal here is really to explore how families work, how they operate as these interconnected units, and how all those connections shape us as individuals.
Okay, let's get into it then. First up, thinking about the family not just as like individuals living together, but as a system, a dynamic system. That's the core of family systems theory, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Think of it maybe like a mobile hanging over a crib. You touch one part, the whole thing shifts and moves, right?
Yeah.
It's the same in a family. One person's actions, their mood, their stress, it doesn't just affect them. It sends ripples across the whole family.
So to really get what's going on with, say, parenting or how a kid is developing, you can't just zoom in on the mom and child or the dad and child.
No, exactly. You've got to look wider. What's the relationship like between the parents? How do siblings interact? How does the family unit itself interact with the outside world, school, work, the community? It's all part of the picture.
It's like you can't understand why a single gear in a clock is sticking without looking at how all the other gears are meshing or not meshing around it.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. And one really potent example of this interconnectedness within family systems is something called coercive cycles.
Okay, coercive cycles. What does that look like in practice?
Well, imagine the scene. You've probably seen it. A child starts whining for something in a shop. Maybe a toy, maybe sweets.
Classic scenario.
Right. And the parent, maybe they're tired, stressed, embarrassed. They react harshly. Stop it. Be quiet now.
Okay.
But does the child stop? Often, no. The whining might actually ramp up into a full tantrum.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
So now the parent gets even more frustrated. Maybe they threaten punishment or just get louder. And the child, they get more distressed, more defiant perhaps, and round it goes.
Ah, I see. So it's a cycle because the parent's reaction escalates the child's behavior, and the child's escalated behavior then escalates the parent's reaction.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They're kind of unintentionally training each other to react negatively. It feeds on itself.
Wow. So how do you even begin to break out of something like that? It sounds quite entrenched.
Well, the interesting thing is, it often isn't about finding blame, like who started it. It's more about disrupting the pattern.
Disrupting it how?
By introducing a different response, something unexpected. So for that parent in the shop, instead of meeting escalation with escalation, maybe they try empathy first.
Yeah.
Wow, you really want that toy, huh?
Okay.
While still holding the line, but we're not getting toys today. It changes the dynamic. It doesn't give the negative behavior the expected fuel.
Right, it sort of throws a spanner in the works of that negative cycle. That makes sense. And related to the system idea, there's also the concept of boundaries, right? Even if we're not diving super deep into it now.
Yeah, boundaries are key. Think of them as the sort of invisible rules about who talks to whom, about what, how close people are, how much information is shared between, say, the parents and the kids, or between siblings.
So, like, are parents sharing adult worries with their children inappropriately? That might be a boundary issue.
Exactly. That would be an example of maybe overly permeable or fuzzy boundaries. On the flip side, you could have boundaries that are too rigid, where there's not enough emotional closeness or sharing. It's about finding that healthy balance.
Okay, so the family is a system with interactions, cycles, boundaries. Now, let's shift slightly. Let's talk about emotional security theory. This comes from Patrick Davies and Mark Cummings.
That's right. And the absolute core idea here is a child's feeling of safety. Their emotional security within the family is just fundamental for their well-being, for their adjustment, for everything, really.
So kids are kind of like emotional detectives in their own homes.
You could say that. They are incredibly attuned to the emotional atmosphere. They're constantly, often unconsciously scanning, monitoring, especially the tone between their parents or primary caregivers.
It makes sense. If the main source of your world feels unstable or scary, that's going to affect you deeply.
Profoundly. And emotional security theory really emphasizes the impact of conflict, particularly a conflict between parents. When kids are exposed to a lot of hostile, unresolved conflict, it erodes their sense of security.
And it's not just that parents argue, is it? It's how they argue.
Precisely. Is it frequent? Is it intense? Does it involve yelling, threats, or physical aggression? Does it get resolved, or does it just simmer? Kids pick up on all of this. Ongoing, nasty conflict creates this background level of threat and anxiety for a child.
Even if the arguments aren't directly about the child themselves.
Absolutely, because it threatens the stability of their whole world, the foundation they rely on. Imagine feeling like the ground beneath your feet might split open at any moment. That's kind of how it can feel for a child witnessing destructive conflict.
That's a powerful image. And you mentioned kids interpret things.
Yes, this is crucial. It's not just the conflict itself, but the meaning the child makes of it. Their appraisal, their interpretation. That's what really drives their response.
So a child who sees parents disagree respectfully, maybe even argue, but then make up and things feel okay again, that's very different from a child seeing constant hostility.
Hugely different. The first child might learn that disagreement is normal and can be resolved. The second child might interpret the conflict as meaning their family is falling apart, or that relationships are inherently unsafe, or maybe even that it's somehow their fault.
And that feeling of being unsafe, that lack of security,
Yeah.
how does that show up in kids' behavior?
It can manifest in lots of ways. You might see internalizing problems, things like anxiety, becoming withdrawn, maybe signs of depression. Or you could see externalizing behaviors.
Like acting out.
Yeah, like aggression, being defiant, having trouble with rules at home or school. Sometimes these behaviors, which look like bad behavior, are actually signals. Signals of underlying distress and insecurity stemming from the family environment.
So we shouldn't just look at the behavior in isolation, but think about the emotional context behind it.
Exactly. Because think about the flip side. A child who does feel emotionally secure, who feels their home base is safe and predictable, they have so much more energy and capacity to, well, just be a kid.
How so?
They can explore the world, they can focus at school, they can build friendships, take risks in learning because they're not constantly worried or vigilant about what's happening at home. They have that secure base, that safe harbor to return to. Their emotional resources aren't being drained, just trying to feel safe.
That makes perfect sense. If your foundations feel shaky,
Yeah.
it's hard to build anything on top, isn't it?
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. So wrapping this part up then. We've seen the family as this interconnected system where everyone affects everyone else, sometimes in these repeating cycles like the coercive ones.
Uh-huh. And we've layered on top of that the absolute critical importance of emotional security, that feeling of safety and predictability within the family, especially for a child's healthy development. Understanding how conflict impacts that security is key.
These two perspectives together, family systems and emotional security, they really offer a powerful way to understand the sheer complexity of family life, don't they, and how it shapes us.
Definitely. And it leaves us with something for you, the listener, to maybe ponder. Thinking about your own family or families you know well, can you see these dynamics playing out?
Yeah, like what are the subtle interaction patterns? What's the underlying emotional climate? How might that feeling of security or maybe lack of security be influencing people?
Right. What happens when you start looking not just at individuals, but at the whole family dance, the system, and tune into those emotional currents? It's often quite revealing.
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of this particular deep dive. We hope exploring these ideas about family systems and emotional security has given you some valuable new ways to think about family dynamics. Thanks for joining us.